Trustee Dodge?
Here.
Trustee Calandrello?
Here.
Trustee Healy?
Here.
Trustee Katsinas?
Here.
Trustee Malani?
Here.
Mayor Pico?
Here.
Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the January 6, 2020 Committee to Whole meetings.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Benton.
move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole, January 6, 2020.
Second. Any changes? Call roll.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Dodge?
Abstain.
Trustee Calandrello?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Mayor Pico?
Aye.
An ordinance amending Title 8, Chapter 6 of the Orland Park Village Code in regard to drug paraphernalia and recreational cannabis. Recommended ordinance.
I'll entertain a motion to recommend the village board to pass an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending Title 8, Chapter 6 of the Orland Park Village Code in regard to drug paraphernalia and recreational cannabis.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Dodge.
so moved. Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. George, can you give us just a quick background, or somebody?
Maybe the
give us a
chief
quick
can
background?
just do a quick background.
Certainly, members of the board, Mayor Pico, this is amending our ordinance as a result of the new recreational marijuana and medical marijuana bills that have been passed to allow several exceptions to allow for cannabis paraphernalia to be used for recreational and medical marijuana, which is currently not allowed in our current ordinance, as well as an exception for the Department of Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities if they're delivering substances containing cannabis. Simply two exceptions to our ordinance as a result of the new not medical but recreational marijuana law. It's two simple exceptions.
Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Dodge.
Just, Tim, related to this, the Springfield, or has the science gotten any better about being able to prove driving while intoxicated with marijuana, or is that still one of these open issues Springfield hasn't addressed?
Open issue that Springfield has not addressed.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Malani.
Unfortunately, the state, in its infinite wisdom once again, has blessed us with this legalization of marijuana in the first place, and I was against it when that happened, and unfortunately, this has to come along with it. Unfortunately, I'm still against it, and I think this was a hurried decision by the state, and I think the implications were not thought through before the process was implemented, so just very, very unfortunate that we have to do this.
Any other comments or questions? Call the roll.
Trustee Dodge?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Nay.
Mayor Pico?
Aye.
Honey, 143rd Street jurisdictional transfer from Woolcook Road to Wolf Road.
We don't need a motion here. Can we get a update on this?
So Krishid is going to just provide an update on a proposal that we have regarding 143rd Street widening.
Very long.
I just wanted to give you a quick update on the history of 143rd project. As you know, this project is in the design for about 15 years. And in that time frame, we have not been able to get any funding for the project. Over the years, we have applied for several different types of fundings. That includes federal Tiger Grant, Surface Transportation Program, which is local as well as regional funds. And then our focus over the last several years have been to somehow get our project into the multi-year program by IDOT. Unfortunately, we were very close last year, but it didn't make the list. So at present, the project status is that the phase for the so we divided the project into two sections, what we call western section and eastern section. The western section is Wilcook Road to Wolf Road. Phase 1 on that is complete. Phase 2 is 90% complete. Technically, it is complete, but IDOT does not allow you to get Phase 2 approval until there is construction funding available. So basically, they sit on it until there is funding available. The estimated construction cost for that section of the road is $14 million as of 2019 numbers. The second section, which is our more expensive section, is Wolf Road to Southwest Highway. Phase 1 engineering is expected to complete late this year, and then will take about 2 more years to complete Phase 2. The estimated construction cost for that section is $54 million. The reason for that high dollar value is because there are quite a bit of land bridges that exist in that area. The soil in that area is very bad. That would require us to put land bridges just like what we have on Route 159. So earlier this year, we learned that IDOT has a program where they will give a priority for funding if a village is interested in taking over a section of the roadway, like they will transfer the ownership of that roadway from IDOT to Village of Orland Park. There are some restrictions on that. For example, the section of that roadway must be an unmarked highway. To give you an example, the Route 143 is a marked highway up to Wolf Road, and then it turns south. So between Wolf Road and Will Cook Road, it is an unmarked highway. It's IDOT's jurisdiction, but it is not as part of any of their highway marking system on their maps. So to point you here, this is Southwest Highway to 143rd, down to Wolf Road, and then again to Southwest Highway. That is Route 7, Illinois Route 7. But this portion from here, Wolf Road to Will Cook Road, is an unmarked highway. So we learned earlier this year that IDOT would give a priority funding status if the village shows a willingness in writing that we would be interested if they build this portion of the roadway, then the village will take over the ownership, and then the village will be responsible for maintenance and rebuilding it forever. That is the status for that. That is the purpose of today's presentation, is to talk to you about that. Very quickly on that, there are 6 steps in that. We send a letter to IDOT. Hopefully IDOT will accept that letter, and at that point they will have a fund allocation by IDOT. If they do that, there are 2 ways to do it. IDOT will build the road at their own expense, and they will be responsible for any unknown conditions that may come up during construction. So if there is cost overruns, they'll pay for that. So that's one way. The second one is to take it over as a lump sum check from IDOT, and then we build it from our own funds. It does not mean that there are unknown conditions, if they come up, that the IDOT will not pay for it. There's more complication, or there's more process to go through if we have to come up with more money or request more money from IDOT. So that's a decision that does not have to be made today, but it is an option that is available. And at that time, IDOT will ask for an IGA. They will want that IGA executed before they'll construct the roadway. And at the completion of the roadway, the jurisdiction will be transferred over to Village of Orland Park, and that's how we can complete a portion of the project. So the purpose of today's presentation is having a discussion with the Board of Trustees, Committee of the Whole, and then if you agree, then the village manager will send a letter to IDOT, and then we will wait from that point on to see when they can bring this project onto their priority funding.
And to add to this, when we met with IDOT, they pointed out that they've spent a lot of money down here, 159th Street in LaGrange. I asked them how much money, and they said, between $100 and $150 million over the last 10 years. I said, well, that's great, because we've provided you over $1 billion during that time, so you're still providing us a very small fraction of what we're providing to you. But with that said, it's not on their 5-year plan. So this seems to be an option in which they would actually fund that section. We've done the same thing in the past with 143rd from Ravinia to Harlem. Yes. So we have taken jurisdiction of that in the past to get that widened. So that's where this sits right now.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Healy.
Khursheed, can you tell me what's the estimate if we do take it over? we would have to rebuild it sometime in the future, right? I mean, what's the estimated useful life of this road?
With proper repairs, it's expected anywhere from 30 to 40 years.
Okay, so in 30 or 40 years, we're going to have to spend, in today's terms,
$14 million.
$14 million,
Correct.
Today's dollars,
today's dollars.
30 years.
Okay, well,
And it's not unlike what we've done with 143rd and other stuff. And there, it doesn't mean there won't be federal money or state share money or stuff that we can use for that.
Absolutely.
We may not have to come out of pocket for it, but it means it would be our responsibility to find the funding, and there are other funding sources.
We may still go back to IDOT for additional funding, but it will be our responsibility.
Mayor Pico?
Trustee Dodge.
Just kind of picking up on Trustee Seeley comments and your comments. We've done this in the past, right, where 143rd, a pretty big stretch of it. And I think more than a few of us were shocked when we saw workers out there carrying essentially large blocks of styrofoam over which to lay a road. And so, you know, we should certainly look at this, but I think the essence of the question is, and the costs will be what? Right? There's our costs for doing all the engineering. There's the risk of we take the check from IDOT and then something comes up and then magically they don't have money for the overruns, the whole shot. So, I mean, it's worthwhile considering because we have done it in the past to get a road done. Check. Got that. I also would like to make sure that we have a perspective on the additional operational costs for the life of the road. Because if I'm not mistaken, when we took over 143rd, because of the size of the road, we wound up then having to buy much bigger snowplows to service that road. So the guys in Public Works will have to make sure my memory serves. So I wouldn't mind a perspective on the operational costs. And then to Trustee Healy's comments, it's going to happen to us in the rest of 143rd. You know, there's parts of that road that are not in great shape already, and it's far shorter than a 30-year lifespan. And I think I'm now on my third complete rebuild of 294 since I've been working. So I have a healthy skepticism for anticipated lives of roads because they almost always have more traffic and we almost always have worse weather than is anticipated. So a conditional yes, what's it going to cost? Fully loaded, operational and CapEx.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Fenton.
does that 14 million include all the work that's going to have to be done in the section that is constantly flooding?
Yes,
It does, it fixes the flooding in that area.
it does.
And it changes it to 4 lanes or 3 lanes?
It changes to 5 lanes, 2 lanes each way with a center left turn lane.
It makes it 5 lanes like it will be, because Will County's approved, State Street to Bell. It will be from 355 all the way to 294, except for Ravinia to Will Cook. So it would make that section in Orland Park the same as everywhere else except the other section in Orland Park. It will also, the other benefit, well, we will also continue to work the build grant at the same time. If we get the build grant, then we don't have to do this. But it will hopefully put some pressure on the state to do the rest of the road, as well as, since it was a STP fund, it was the priority project for the region as it was. They'll put more points towards just this section, the section left over, so there's more chance we get the rest of that built. So it does help us potentially get the rest of that built sooner.
You're right, Mayor. It squeezes IDOT, literally that is less than a mile section left in the about 15 to 17 miles from 355 to almost 294, Pulaski. And this is the only section that will be left alone.
Mayor Pico?
Trustee Dodge.
Just general comment, not about anything we've said here tonight, but when IDOT was coming through talking about 355 and 355 expansions, and they were going around with all the community meetings, they were dutifully telling everybody who was gathered about all the wonderful crossroads like 143rd and 159th and, you know, at the south end, let's just call it Southwest, 179th, that would all be part of this big master plan. Congratulations. We're still looking at an awfully big bill to get it done, and it's just, I think, continuing frustration. The state talks a pretty good game, but then when it comes down to it, lots of money's allocated elsewhere, but they don't come through with some of these commitments. So it's just, it's an is.
I mean,
It's an is.
the state can't be trusted. It's a shocker, I know, to everybody here.
I'm glad we were sitting down when you said that, Mayor Pico.
Any other comments or questions? Well, so in general, I think this is a good plan, and it's a plan, it's not the only plan, we're attacking it from multiple directions, but it makes sense to attack it in this direction as well. Does everybody here concur that we should tell staff to continue to move forward with this?
Let's get some numbers.
Anybody disagree? Perfect. There you go, I think you have your marching orders.
151st Street from West Avenue to Ravinia, overhead utility lines.
If you could give us a rundown of this, I'd appreciate it.
Yes. So currently have a project coming up 151st Street from West Avenue to Ravinia. Along the north side of that is the ComEd power lines. Right here is an aerial. The blue is kind of outlining the area of construction. You can see the police department's building right here. The fire district is right here. During our coordination with this project, the fire district brought up concerns about clearance with the existing utility lines on the north side. So I'll zoom into this picture right here. You can see this is what's out there today. There's a ComEd power lines, ComEd secondary line, ComEd fiber, and Comcast. The red is ComEd power lines. These two, black and blue, are the secondary and fiber lines. And the yellow, the low line, is the Comcast line. This line seems to be causing most of the issues because the clearance is approximately 15 feet. A standard clearance for a bridge is 16, so this causes issues with fire truck egress, ingress. You can also see the sag is kind of cut off by the tree, so you get some sag in that line as well because these spans are pretty large. So in evaluating these utility lines, we found out, like I said, Comcast is the lowest. So some relocation options. How can we look at this issue? Option one, we bury all the lines, including the common line and all the utility lines, 1,900 feet. What does it give us? Well, we get Orland Fire District concerns addressed, possibility of reduction in service interruption because it's underground now instead of overhead. The aesthetic views are improved in the area. You don't have overhead lines for that length. Obviously, outside that length, there's still aerial. Option two, save a little more money, do the same thing, but just across the fire district's driveway. We save on costs, and like I said before, it addresses the issue. Option three, which is the current design ComEd has, is aerial relocation. They'll move the poles a little north. It'll address the fire district's concerns because the poles are actually larger. They're being put in taller, 50 feet to be exact, with the 10-foot barrel that'll put the power lines at 40 feet and all the utility lines in an area from 25 to 30 feet, which means it'll be 10-foot more clearance than what we have today. So that would address their issues, but you still have the aerial existence of the power lines. And it's a minimal cost to the village. We may have some kind of coordination issues to manage with our consultant and ourselves, but nothing monetarily that you'll see on this next slide when we cover the costs. So option one, burial of the whole thing, $1.6 million, an estimated cost for the 1,900 feet. Option two, for just across the fire station driveway, it's about $400,000 estimated. And then option three, like again, it's a minimal cost. It's more absorbed than what we have going on. So looking at this big picture from engineering point of view, what solves the issue at a minimal cost to the village is option three. So we recommend that engineering-wise. But I do understand and appreciate the aesthetic value to some people of certain aspects. So option one could be a case, but it's the most expensive option. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Fenton.
has the fire district been contacted about the 400,000? Since they're the ones with the concern of the sagging Comcast line?
We haven't contacted them yet. Once we got further direction, we're looking to see what that meant to them.
And, yeah.
Just a thought.
Mr. Mayor, is it,
Trustee Fenton, or Trustee Healy?
is it normal practice for ComEd to chip in for some of this?
So the overhead relocation is done.
For any of the other ones?
No, because they don't automatically do it underground. They make you pay for it. In my experience,
And my second question is the area to the west of this map. They're all overhead wires and backyards and.
Yes, you're exactly right.
Is there a long-term plan to bury those too? Or do we have any long-term plan to adjust those?
Right now, no, but if we started here, I don't think it would stop. That's something we'd have to determine a policy on. And when I worked for Naperville, they had a policy for the whole downtown to do this, and they spent millions and millions of dollars to come in for this purpose.
What's the overall cost of the project? 151st?
The overall project cost is about $4.8 million.
So we're going to spend 33% of that just to bury cable?
Correct.
Mayor Pico?
Trustee Dodge?
You know, we've spent money in the past burying cables, but it had a very specific aesthetic purpose on the commercial areas like LaGrange and 159th for some very obvious reasons. I mean, if the fire district wants to chip in to bury it in front of their fire station, great. If not, you know, we're doing the road, go high, especially if that's a minimal cost to the village through ComEd. To me, it's a total non-starter to spend any money on this.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Katsinas?
are you aware if they had any incident where a truck, or it would probably be a fire truck, that would catch that line at all? Have they have any incident where a wire snapped, where it interfered with their operations?
No, not to date, but as the line sags and gets older, it's a pretty large span if you go out there.
Yeah.
It could be a possibility, but a lot of times they work around it, right? So they want to have to avoid working around it, because in some situations, as the police chief and deputy
Do you know
chief
if the
tell you,
fire
seconds matter.
I'm sorry, did the fire district contact ComEd at all? Are you aware of that or no?
No, it was, they mentioned to us in our coordination of the project, so we proactively contacted ComEd and found out what would this mean cost-wise.
I think something with health and safety that they would be right on. You know, this isn't just simply aesthetic. If there's an issue that the line's going to fall or sag where it could snap, you know, you think they'd be more receptive to doing something.
You know, Comcast line's not really life safety.
No, that's true. That's the one that's the lowest, so.
If I just may add, one of the reasons for us to bring you this project today here is several years ago when this project was in its concept phase, at the time, the leadership, village leadership, budgeted over $1 million to bury these lines. And over the time, I think the priorities did not stay as it was originally thought about. And that's one reason we wanted to see if you could give us some directions where to take it from here.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Malani?
Quick question. I mean, underground lines are usually safer and usually provide more stable service, thus increasing the quality of service we provide to the residents, right? So, I mean, I understand that would be a plus because I did drive through there today and those lines are ugly, right? And putting taller lines in front of the fire department will probably be even uglier. Unfortunately, $400K to 1.6 million is a lot to invest, so I agree there as well. I mean, is there any other way we can look to subsidize some of this? Anywhere else to look for money?
A ComEd program is to pass the, you can pass these costs on to everybody in Orland Park. So it would be added on to ComEd bills in Orland Park. They call it a rider program. So they'll do it, they'll bury it, but everybody has to pay for it then.
So every ComEd customer would have to pay for a half-mile stretch of road to be buried?
Right. So then that's kind of their standard answer. So every municipality always asks for burial cables, you know, that they want that for aesthetics. And they said they'll do whatever you want, you're just going to have to pay for it.
Trustee Milani, one of the challenges that will come across, where do you stop? Right now, on an average, it's about $100,000 per 100 feet. That's easier if you want to do a math. That's what it is. That's based on what the information we have received from ComEd.
I'd also add the other lines, utility lines, they will charge as well. They won't just underground for free. So Comcast, if it's AT&T, et cetera, that are on the poles by right through ComEd, there'll be costs for them as well. And usually they make you pay for the engineering, never mind the construction.
Any other comments?
No, and I agree with, the idea of, if the fire department think this is an issue, maybe, maybe we can find a way to get them to help out with the cost. So that's it.
Mr. Mayor, I would just echo. Oh, sorry.
Scoundrel.
I was just echo. I think maybe the fire department section, we probably work something out, but the rest, you can stay above the line. So if something we can work out, but I would say save the money, the rest of the money.
So unless the fire district's paying for it, I say raise the lines, because you can raise them easily so that the fire district can clear it. 16 feet's what they need on a bridge, so no reason why it looks like those other lines are above 16 feet. So they'll probably raise them higher than that, so it shouldn't be an issue. So is there a consensus to, unless the fire district pays for it, we'll go with option 3? Anybody disagree with that?
Mr. Mayor, I'd be okay with discussing if maybe this is shared. I mean, I would pay a little bit for safety.
So you're willing to spend the money on option 2?
No.
Anybody else willing to spend the money
That's-
on option 2?
I'd be willing to have a conversation about splitting some costs in some way.
Okay, what conversation do you want to have? That's what we're having right now.
Well, I'm saying with the fire district, so that's my thing, is we should at least talk to the fire district, see if they're willing to share some of the costs.
So you're willing to share the cost with the fire district. I'm not willing to share the cost with the fire district. How does everybody else feel about sharing the cost with the fire district? Anybody for sharing the cost with the fire district? So, so we have 6 people that say don't share it with the fire district. I think we have 6 people saying that option 3 is the choice. And Trustee Calandrelli, you'd be willing to share some of the costs, but I think the board's direction is let's raise it up. And if the fire district wants to do it, I don't think any of us has a problem with it, but let them pay for it.
Mayor Preco, I just want to emphasize that if the fire district wants to come up with the money to bury it in front of their house for safety or aesthetic reasons,
socks off.
all in.
Yep, knock socks off.
Right,
We're not paying
but,
for it.
splashing this, ultimately, it's coming from the taxpayer. You're either going to pay it on your utility bill, or you're going to pay it on other taxes, and I would rather go back to residents, if we need to in the future, to say, we need a few extra dollars because we need to bury more lines up and down LaGrange or 159. That's a different ask than this, so.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we got our direction.
Yep.
Orland Ridge Development Agreement and ordinance approval.
I'll entertain a motion to recommend the village board approve the Orland Ridge Development Agreement with recommended modifications located at 16727 to 16801 South LaGrange Road, Orland Park, Illinois 60462, and move to recommend to the village board to pass an ordinance entitled Ordinance Authorizing Development Agreement Orland Ridge 16727 to 16801 South LaGrange Road.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Dutch.
just, could you give staff give a quick synopsis of what changed? I went through the documents, and it seems pretty consistent with what we've generally been working on, but what are you asking to change tonight in this document?
So Krishid, if you can just go through and just give a presentation here.
Okay. I'll try to update the committee here very quickly on this project. This project has been in the working for over 2.5 years or so. So I'll try my best to go through it very quickly and then come back to the question that you asked.
Yeah, just simple summary, that's all.
All right.
It was a summary of the changes, which is the public art, right?
We don't need the before, we just need the now.
Right, I mean, I just want to make sure we're all clear on what's changed in these agreements.
So really nothing has really changed, right, Krishid?
Nothing has changed.
The real thing that we want to talk about is the public art component to this. And so if you can just get right to the public art.
I will. Do I need to update, George, about the development agreement, because this is Committee of the Whole's opportunity to also understand the details of.
So is there any changes to the development agreement other than the public art?
No.
No.
There's relatively
Development
minor
agreement
changes,
has-
correct?
Let's stick with the changes.
Okay.
Which is the public art.
So this project was, when it was in the development process, because of its location, which is relatively isolated from the rest of the downtown or the rest of the village, the thought process at the time from the village leadership as well as from the staff was to come up with an experience at this development. And so the staff got approval through the village board and the planning commission to have up to $400,000 spent on a public art component. and that's why we are here for.
And that was our $400,000 we were going to spend, right?
It was $100,000 by the developer, and the $300,000 was coming from the exaction fee from the, so these are some of the examples that if I could show you, this is what, and this is just a staff's opinion or a staff's discussion, is what can be used in here. Because one of the reasons we wanted to have something more here was the roundabout in this project is owned by the village. 169 Place and the roundabout is owned by the village, but it is will be maintained by the developer in perpetuity. These were just some of the thoughts that we came up with. I completely understand you may or may not like it. Right now the keyboard is not working. So this is what we are asking for, is that you can accept the development agreement as it was approved on April 15, which has these elements defined, or you can eliminate the public art altogether. However, the staff still believes that because the roundabout is owned by the village and there is a lookout component into it which will be allowed to be used by the public. It will not be restricted to this development only. It will be available by the development agreement, that it will be available to anybody in the village to be able to use that. The second thought is this development is about half an acre short in park space, and they will be paying $76,371 as their fee for that shortage. So the second option possibly is to use the $100,000 that the developer is going to put into it and add the $76,000 that is coming from this development as park space cost, and then have that $176,000 available to enhance the roundabout as well as the lookout. If you want, I can quickly take you where the lookout is located.
So if I can summarize.
Sure.
If we did this, we would eliminate the public art, which means we're not spending $300,000 in sculptures in a residential area that nobody's going to see.
That's true.
And as we probably all agree, no one will agree on what is good art and what's not good art. And then what you're recommending to us is that $100,000 that the developer would have used towards public art, that we ask them to use that for improvement of the roundabout and other park areas, and the $76,000 they're paying us because they're short, because it's a variance, so they're paying us $76,000, that we use that towards improvements in the landscaping.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
So in other words, we're not going to expend any money here, but we're going to still do some landscape improvements in the roundabout. Is that basically in a nutshell?
That's true.
Okay.
Mayor Pico.
Trustee Dodge.
Thank you for that. So everybody who lives in this development, they're going to have pretty good access to the grasslands across the street, right?
That is true.
Because they'll have an intersection that's at 171st.
That's true.
All right, so I'm happy to not do the art, because I didn't want anybody confused that bronze statue of an elk represents what lives in that forest preserve, so it's probably better if we got rid of the public art. Enhancing the roundabout makes total sense. It's going to be more practical, and we got other things to spend the money on.
I agree. No sense in spending money on the public art, and we should make sure that the roundabout and everything is landscaped properly. Any other comments?
No, Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Fenton.
Just other than that particular art, no offense, but it looks like it belongs up in Montana. Just didn't look appropriate down where it was going. I could see the wings being broken off and the antlers being taken away. I agree with this, the $176,000.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, sounds like you have your marching order, no public art, but let's use those funds to improve the landscaping.
Thank you.
And, yep, so, call the roll.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Dodge?
Aye.
Trustee Calandrella?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Mayor Pico?
Aye. Motion carries.
Village Code amendments to Title VI, Chapter 2 nuisances, Title 7, Chapter 13 peddlers and transient merchants, and Title 5, Chapter 8 rental housing.
I'll entertain a motion to recommend to the village board to approve the changes to the village code as discussed and request staff to draft an ordinance for approval at the next village board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Could you give us a quick,
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, other members of the village board. The items before you tonight for amendment to the village code are basically just clarification amendments. They're things that staff comes across occasionally or very frequently when they're trying to enforce codes that are questioned. Ultimately, the code enforcement takes place according to what we have originally suggested, but they have an opportunity to question a section of the code. Why does it say this? For example, we all know weeds in high grass is an issue, and it can't be more than 8 inches. Well, that's in that same section. It says that in no event a homeowner who is cited with this will have to at least cut their grass twice, 2 times a year in 2 different time periods. We fight them on that section, and it's upheld in court. So there isn't really any reason to continue to have it in the code. And there's similar amendments that I've called out in this report that will just make it easier to enforce. They aren't substantive amendments, really, where we're changing what's being required. It's just a clarification of the language. So it's easier for the people that are being cited to understand what's being required of them.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Calandrello.
I definitely agree with the grass. That makes sense. I deal with this a lot in different villages. The only question I have is regarding Title 5, Chapter 8, regarding the appliances and they break. I mean, the landlord could just take them out if they wanted to. I mean, that's one thing I kind of stood out at me that might be a little over the top, but.
So that's a good point. I think when you're referring to appliances like a dishwasher or something along those lines, but this is more so in lines with an air conditioner. And in the summertime, when it gets really hot, the air conditioner goes out. There's no other code requirement across really the nation in this type of enforcement that requires a tenant or someone to have air conditioning. So really what this section is saying is if they sign a lease that has these items working when they sign it and they expect it to continue, that gives us the opportunity to make the landlord fix it. So that's really what this code section is trying to address.
Thank you. I just thought that was maybe a possible overkill, but I understand your reasoning.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Katsinas.
But I don't really think it's overkill, Dan, because if you look, if somebody's leasing a property in the village of Orland Park, it has a refrigerator and all the appliances, air conditioning, something goes out, certainly it's fair to the tenant, and it gives you more specific authority to enforce the code. So I think that's in, certainly in the tenant's best interest. We'd want to think that a landlord would go ahead and fix it right away, but as we all know, that's not always the case.
Correct.
I know someone that was without a refrigerator for over a month. They forgot to check it in the lease, so technically they weren't entitled to one, right? So I think it just makes it specifically clear for all the parties, and it protects the landlord and the tenant equally, and also you to do your job in the field. So I think that was very well written.
I think Trustee Calandrello was saying that he thought it was overkill until he got the explanation, so I think he
But
agrees with you.
I'm just worried that that if we enforce it hard enough, it's going to be a disaster. I think that's the one point. I mean, if you're a landlord and the fridge goes out, hopefully you're a good landlord and you're out the next couple of days. But, if we're writing an ordinance violation in the first 60 minutes of it, then I think that's an issue. That's all I'm saying.
Mayor
Trustee
Pico?
Dodge.
Yeah, just to build on those comments, I like what we're doing. Be interesting to see how this unfolds as to whether or not this is an administrative nightmare for you guys. So hopefully not. That's my hope.
Mine as well.
And it's nice to have it documented, but let's hope it's not
Well, it's
a
just,
heavy burden on staff.
yes, I agree. And the intent is always to revisit these codes, and if this helps or hurts, then we'll be back here to, if it doesn't work, then we'll be back to change it.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Dodge?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Mayor Pico?
Aye.
Nobody signed.
There's no citizens signed in. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Adjourned.